it's important that we all continue to grow and learn more in our professional development. If we all just did what we learned in our initial college education, we would maybe be doing things that certainly aren't aware of where children's development is. I knew nothing about brain development in my college education. You know, it was very limited information at the time, even when I went for my graduate work. But you know, now, of course, when you stay up to date and you go to the conferences and you do the readings and you stay informed, then you're able to better implement some of that practice. There have been issues that have come up that weren't apparent 25 years ago. Cultural diversity issues, English language learners were not prominent 20 years ago, maybe not even so much 10 years ago. I think about some of my training and education, and I had very little background in diversity and cultural, family of cultural backgrounds, yet that is now one of my passions. But I had to learn about and seek out that information. And so you need that continuous professional development.
I think it's so important that that reflective practice piece is built within the system, that there are opportunities where the program leaders can look at their training and technical assistance calendar, their professional development calendar, and say, you know what, they have received training on this, 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 and this. After they've had an experience, do we actually loop back and engage with our staff? Do we do observations to look at how is this information living in the environment now that they have received the support or the training? What's working incredibly well? What are the glow marks, if you will, that we would really want to shine and cast a light on? What are the things that seem to still be challenging us a little bit, opposed to here's a training, here's a training, here's a training?
Hoy es jueves. Hay que decirlo en una frase completa. ¿Listos? Hoy es jueves. ¿Y qué idioma vamos a hablar el día de hoy?
Español.
I have found through coaching that if a teacher is trained in a certain strategy and they're not provided some kind of coaching support, peer support, if they get frustrated because they can't do it, they'll stop doing it.
Ahora fíjate bien. ¿Tú qué crees que animal siga? Ponte con tu compañero.
And so when we're at our planning meetings, if a teacher states that they're having difficulty with a particular strategy or would like to see that strategy again, I will go in and do a demo. And then after that, I always like to go back when the teacher is actually doing the strategy and provide feedback for them. If they want to see me do something again, I'll come right back in again, or we'll team teach. But if not, then I'll leave them alone for a week or two, and then I'll come back again and just make sure that that strategy is really strong and they feel really comfortable with it.
So it's really knowing each one of your staff, what their needs are, and how they best learn. So it's getting to know them and spending the time and knowing that we're all different in how we learn, and to make sure that they have an opportunity to express firsthand what they see as areas of need, and then meeting them there. So continuously developing or co-developing what they see as their professional development and asking them, how can I support you in that?
I think if I were to add anything at all in regards to thinking about professional development, is the power of a pause, to be able to take pause and say, we have done X amount of trainings. Have we ever stepped back to assess the effectiveness of these trainings, how the teachers are responding? Equally important, how are the children responding? When I look at their documentation systems, do I see some of those training elements living in their documentation, or are we just continuing to tick the box to say, we provided this training, we provided that training, we provided this training?
I mean, all of them are kind of really settling in and showing, you know, their personalities and being more comfortable, and so that's good, you know.
And they're getting to know us more, and we are getting to know them more.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it's incredibly important for staff members to have a time to meet, a place to engage, a time to nurture and honor their talents and their strengths. Having the opportunity to learn something that perhaps you didn't know about the person that you share a classroom with.
Oh, and remember that
pass my citizenship test.
As an early childhood educator, I'm willing to make that commitment where I will sit down with you once or twice a month where we could at least sit and talk about what's working really well in our classroom or in your classroom, that maybe I could be of support to you.
Denise leaves off the beginning sounds and the end sounds.
Yes.
Okay, so she needs help with enunciating. And I caught myself the other day, I'm beginning to understand her language. So, which is a disadvantage because I caught myself not repeating it and having her repeat it back. Then I called her back and said, wait a minute, Denise. And she comes back, she kind of rolled her eyes at me and said, uh-oh, she caught me.
And you know what it is with Denise? That she speaks very fast. So you have to tell her, slow down. And then after it's, okay, repeat.
One thing that really works well with our staff is that they are very comfortable with each other. They trust each other, they respect each other, and they're not afraid to ask another staff member for support. So if I know that another teacher is good at creating room environments, all the teachers know that. So a teacher may say, I'm struggling in this area. Can you come and show me or give me some ideas for how I would move this around?
I think being proactive with staff and your colleagues about how we're going to communicate is just great groundwork just to ensure that you have a collaborative environment.
In preparing future early childhood educators, how do you go about helping them gain a sense of what it means to be an ethical ECE professional?
We want to help them understand ethical conduct and what it is to be a professional. And some ways that we go about that is, for example, in a beginning student in a classroom, is we introduce them to the profession. What does it mean to be an early childhood teacher? What is an early childhood teacher? What are all the different roles that they can take? Most importantly, it's an ongoing process. It's a continuous process. You're constantly needing to revisit it. With students, we tend to begin the topic in an early class, in probably their introductory class, so that they're learning about the concepts and in being introduced to the NAEYC Code of Ethical Conduct, so that by the time they get into the practicum, they're actually experiencing that, and you can practice scenarios and get ideas about how that is enforced or implemented within programs. But it takes reflective practice. Beginning practitioners need to think about all of these situations, talk to others. How do you handle this kind of a situation without breaching confidentiality, but by talking about how you deal with that? What do you do about it?
Early childhood professionals many times have decisions to make about right and wrong, and in working with children and families and their colleagues as well. They're presented sometimes with some scenarios where they have to make a decision on and consider usually two children or two families' values or two sets of colleagues' opinions. And if there's a decision to be made in terms of right and wrong or finding a win-win, many times there are gray areas. So early childhood professionals have to ask questions, probe, be a good listener, and gather information so that they can make the right decision.
I think that respect is a critical piece of that topic of illustrating ethical conduct. And I think that teachers specifically do it individually with children and with families, and colleagues need to do it with one another, that listening to one another, that communication piece is really important, listening to one another, but being respectful of differences and different points of view is one way that we illustrate ethical conduct, I think, on a daily basis. A big part of introducing people to the field and the profession is just talking about what this profession is. What do we do? What is an ECE professional? What does it mean to be a professional? Think about what is your philosophy about children? How do you teach young children? How do you approach young children? Those are all parts of developing your own professional integrity, your professional identity.
When we think about developing early childhood educator professionals and we think about what they need to learn, why is it important for them to master a specialized body of knowledge in child development and early childhood?
I think there's many reasons. One is that knowledge really helps us to understand children, their behaviors, their needs, their interests, their temperaments, and potentials, and all these things. And secondly, I think it's very important for us. This knowledge support our practice to not only just communicating with others and say why we do what we do.
We are a profession because we have this specialized knowledge about how our children grow and learn and develop. And so, just simply, it's important to acknowledge and know it, and then mastering it. The more that we master, and certainly I think you'd agree that none of us really here are done learning, that we're continuing to learn about our specialized body of knowledge.
So that as we learn more about child development, then we have appropriate expectations of children at their various ages, and then we can respond appropriately. I think one way that professionals in the various contexts use the body of specialized knowledge is really in the context of their role, of how they work, who they're working with. So the individual who is the supporting role is really, in my opinion, focused on the child and the classroom environment. As you move up and you're moving more into the leading role, the planning for and guiding in the classroom, then you're expanding that ecosystem, if you will, and you're now working with more families and colleagues, supervising staff. The program management role, creating and maintaining policies, then you need more of the policy and program background and more, again, you're building on all the other things, of course, as you're going along, so you need more interpersonal skills as well, because in that role you're probably supervising a staff of some kind. And when you get to the advancing the field context, I think that's where a lot of it all comes together. You learn about advocacy, you share that information, you learn about your role as a mentor, and you're modeling that and sharing that.
I think a specialized body of knowledge also helps us contribute to what we often call multidisciplinary teams. When we think about family support and when we engage with other professionals from other fields, the medical field, the health field, social services, I think that recognized body of knowledge is essential when we participate in multidisciplinary teams. And it's also very validating. Indeed, I bring something to the table that's important because I have this body of knowledge that helps us as a group of professionals determine the best strategies for the children and the families.
One of the things that strikes me as I'm hearing you all talk about the specialized body of knowledge and how we use that specialized body of knowledge depending on our role and the context in which we're working, is it's not a fixed body of knowledge. It's not something we learn and then we just have, but it's something we work with creatively and adaptively, that we need to adapt our knowledge to the cultural values of the families we're working with. We need to, together with our colleagues, consider the knowledge and observe the children and what are the children showing us and how can we learn from them and connect our body of knowledge to what the behaviors are of the children and what children are engaged in learning, and then how can we adapt what we know to help them keep learning. So it's a very lively relationship we have with this specialized body of knowledge when we're ECE professionals.
And I think our body of knowledge keeps changing, and that's why our field has to keep up and do our homework and keep reading and keep learning and know that we're constantly learners.
Every now and then I hear from a colleague, oh no, are we changing that? Are we doing this differently? There's data, this informs our thinking, and this is why we're making this change, because here's what we're aiming for. There's a goal that we're trying to attain. So yes, we do continually change and reflect. It's a good thing. Well, I think the key is that it's ongoing, and we use ongoing professional development for our teachers, and we ask them to continuously look at our young children and look at their assessments and continue to plan ongoing for their growth and development. I think it's important for programs as a whole to also look at ongoing continuous improvement. And so what that means is, first of all, at the administrative level, they have to gather some data that they can analyze and think about. That at the program level, administrators also are thoughtful and intentional about what they can do for their program, for their teachers and their children, by providing professional development or doing an inventory of materials in your classroom. Typically, these continuous program improvement plans are long-term annual, so that you're looking at the end of the year, how do we do on that? Are we doing better? Where can we continue to do better? But it's the higher level as well as in the classroom is critical.
Another piece of the administrator's role in this encouraging self-assessment and reflective practice is, I really think the administrator needs to take time to be in the classrooms. There needs to be a presence. The administrator needs to be in there, in the classrooms, observing, having those conversations, taking that time for the reflection. I just saw what you did, tell me a little bit more about why you did it that way. Just the ongoing process of doing it is very important.
And then I'd suggest that teachers reflect probably ongoing throughout the day, because I'm thinking that when I was in the classroom and I developed an activity and provided it with the children, and I was constantly saying, that didn't work, or next time I'm going to try. So you're observing and thinking about your role in what's going on and how to affect change. What can I do to make this successful? There's always tomorrow. There's always the next time you're going to be working with young children. And so there's kind of this ongoing reflection and thinking, hopefully, about what you're doing now for the very next day. So in the same way that we prompt young children in their learning, we can do the same with our staff to get them to think about problems and pose questions to them so that they're engaged in thinking and coming up with ideas and contributing their thoughts about how to approach something that perhaps the administrator would like to see changed in classroom or in their program. Just the modeling by the administrator of being open to ideas, asking for input, and asking for their suggestions about what changes could occur in their program, then that's going to engage professionals in their thinking.
One of the roles administrators play in supporting staff's professional development is providing the resources. It's not, on the one part, it's helping the individual, I think about their career development, but it's also what are the opportunities out there in your community, either that we might bring in. If somebody goes to a workshop and there's somebody local, maybe they can bring them into the center and do something for parents and staff, or just for staff.
And I will say that as an administrator, there's nothing more exciting than when one of your staff members has participated in professional development and comes back just thrilled and energized and full of ideas. And that's just really rewarding as well, that you've supported in their learning. And I've heard you say love of learning. I've heard you say it's so exciting in our field. We have that excitement because we've experienced all of those opportunities. But that's why I think it's important that as a program administrator that we ensure that our staff members dip into all of those options so they too can get energized and motivated and excited about our field.